In this video, I'm going to be putting together a top 10 list for the most aspect versatile heroes in the game. And why is that important, you might ask? And I think that it's a very important thing in the game to be versatile in what aspect you can use for a variety of reasons. One is that it changes how you play the game. So if you're always playing the same aspect with the same cards over and over and over again, the game can get kind of old and boring, stale. You might not want to play that hero over and over again. So if I can only play a hero in one aspect, that's less interesting and less fun to me than if I can play them in many aspects and get multiple experiences with them. So now let's go over what makes a hero aspect versatile. In my opinion, what makes a hero versatile in what aspect they can choose is that they are self-sufficient, they have good tempo, they're very reliable, and they have a bit of control. So another big thing is that they don't have to fix their weaknesses with different aspects for them to be functional. So especially in solo, this becomes very important. So you can think of a hero, a very easy example, it's Hulk. Hulk has to fix his weakness of thwarting, either by playing justice or leadership, or he's kind of pigeonholed into rushing. In multiplayer, there's some different things you can do where you can build protection builds, play for the team, use your 3 defense stat, be kind of a support role with some damage output every once in a while. But in solo especially, most of the time you're playing Hulk, you really are focusing on how you have to fix Hulk and fix his weaknesses, which limits the amount of cards you can put into his deck. Tempo, I think, is important because if your hero has to build up, that limits the builds you can do. So if your hero doesn't start out with some amount of power, you're going to have to compensate for that somehow, and that's going to limit the amount of cards you can choose and the different aspects that are very good on your hero. Reliability, I think, is important because if you're having consistent experiences with your games and you can expect that your hero will be able to do something, you can build around that easier. So if it's random what your hero's strengths and weaknesses are in a game, depending on the order you draw your cards or depending on the scenario that you're facing, that's going to make it harder for you to be able to freely choose the aspect that you're using. And I think control is important, both in the sense of controlling what the villain's doing and controlling minions and side schemes on the board. Because if you don't have a degree of control built into your hero kit, you might have to find that somewhere else, and not every aspect and build is going to be good at that. So now using this criteria that I'm defining for what makes a hero aspect versatile, I uploaded that into my living tier list website that you may have looked at, and then used that to make my top 10 list, which I thought was pretty fun. And at the end of this video will be a tutorial of how I did that so that you can do similar things with the website yourself. Because that was one of the main reasons I made that, was I wanted people to be able to make special lists like this and figure out things that work for them and find new builds and heroes to play through that website. Now that I've defined what it is I'm talking about for this video, let's jump into my top 10 list. Starting with number 10, which is Shadowcat. Shadowcat is a really cool hero. She has these forms she goes between where there's phased and solid. So those are two sides of the same card. And when she's in phased, she has this force response she has this constant ability, says while Shadowcat is defending, she cannot take damage. But then after you attack or defend in phase form, you flip the card. And then when you're in solid form, it's a physical resource generator. And then also has the response of after you attack or defend, you flip this card to phase. So you're going back and forth between these phases. And in addition to that, you have good stats. So you have a 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense stat line. And then while you're phased, additionally, you get to ignore guard, patrol, and crisis, which is also very useful. And now for every hero in this list, I'm going to talk about one card from each aspect that Shadowcat and whatever other heroes are ahead of her can build around to give you some ideas for some things to try out. And I made a rule for myself that I have to use a different card for every single hero. So since there's 10 heroes and there's 4 aspects that I'm talking about, it's 40 different cards and 40 different builds that you can try out as well. So here are some cards that I think are fun to build around with Shadowcat if you want to try out these aspects. So in aggression, there's surprise attack, which is really cool. It goes with form flipping, which counts from her going from phased to solid, and it gets a kicker for using a physical resource, which a solid form can do. So after you change form, deal 3 damage to an enemy, 4 damage instead if you paid for it using a physical resource. And it's only 1 cost. So 1 for 4 is just a lot of damage output, which is really fun when you're playing Shadowcat to have that extra damage output. Lay Down the Law is really similar, but for thwarting, And if you use a mental, which the resource generator doesn't do that for you, but you can just build mentals into your deck. Also, the resource generator only works for attacks and defenses. But anyways, if you use the mental, you can get a one printed cost for 4 threat removal when you change forms. And every time you use your powers, you're going to be able to do that. Because after you attack or defend in phase, you flip it. And after you attack or defend in solid, you flip it. And then you change forms, and then you can use Lay Down the Law. And then notably, while you're in phase with Lay Down the Law, you can ignore the guard and patrol keywords, which is pretty fun. It's pretty cool for surprise attack and Lay Down the Law. Another one for protection that I think is cool is Powerful Punch. I'm just warning you here, there's a lot of rules that go into this, so you're going to want to bring out your timing charts if you're using Powerful Punch. But the idea is that one of Shadowcat's weaknesses is that if she's caught in the wrong form, she won't be able to get her ability on phased that says while she's defending, she can't take damage. But since Powerful Punch is an attack and defense trait, you can play that as an interrupt to make sure that you're in the correct form. So just pay really close attention to that. But Powerful Punch is really fun for that because it can give you some extra security on staying in the correct form during the villain phase. And I bring Phoenix up here because Shadowcat, again, is very survivable because of her forms. So that means that when you're playing leadership, you're not going to have to block with your allies the whole time. So you don't rely on them to chump block for you so you can stay alive, meaning that you can get more activations out of them before you have to block. And Phoenix can ready them up and heal damage for them, get more activations out of them, and I think that's really fun. So now moving on to number 9. Number 9, little Beatles reference there for anyone that likes the Beatles, is Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham is he has a bunch of money, so he's really survivable. He's hard to take out. He has 12 health, 5 recovery. He has multiple cards, and his cartoon physics allows him to just upgrades that go in play that just let him be invulnerable. Essentially, you just take any amount of damage and turn it into 1. So if you're getting hit for 10, you can just take 1 instead, generate a resource out of it, and that's crazy. So he has really high economy, in addition to these upgrades in his kit that increases stats, and you can remove a tune counter to get a bonus. So the wooden hammer, you can remove the tune counter and then get +2 attack and overkill, which that's pretty cool. And then on organic web binding, same thing, exhaust it, remove a tune counter, and then you can ready Spider-Ham. He gets aerial, so you could try to build around that. I didn't recommend that, but cool, he gets aerial. And now here's 4 cards that you can consider building around for Spider-Ham. So for aggression, we got Battle Fury. It's an upgrade that says after your hero attacks and defeats a minion, deal 1 damage to your hero and discard Battle Fury to ready your hero. So you get that ready for defeating the minion, and notably your wooden hammer gives you overkill. And then the damage you can store as a tune counter. So that's just really good. Great responsibility, same idea, a justice card. When any amount of threat would be placed on a scheme, you can take it as damage instead, which will then generate resources for you and prevent the main scheme from going up. You have high recovery, you're really survivable. That's a great build for him. Taunt. Again, you can have the villain attack you, use your cartoon physics to not take any damage, or just 1 damage, and then you get to draw 3 cards. And then since you have so much resources stored, you can play a bunch of cards like that. Clarity of purpose for leadership, which this is just incredibly broken for Spider-Ham. You can exhaust it and deal 1 damage to a character, generate a wild resource. So you're generating the wild resource with a 1-cost upgrade, but you're also getting another wild resource. So it's essentially a double wild resource generator for Spider-Ham, which is kind of crazy. And now on to number 8, which is Venom. So Venom has all of these upgrades in his kit. So he has the symbiotic bond as well, which says take 1 damage to generate a wild resource. So that means his economy is going to be really good, and he can meet resource requirements really easy because he has the wild there. And his upgrades are really versatile too. So the multi-gun, you can exhaust it and then do one of the following, where you get to deal 2 damage to an enemy, choose a player, deal 1 damage to each minion, engage with that player, which is really good for certain situations where there's a bunch of minions, namely Ultron, which I know all of you have because it's in the core box, or you can remove 2 threat from the scheme. So that's very versatile. And then his pistols help him with his basic stats. So when you use one of its basic powers, you can exhaust the pistol to get +1 power for that use. And since he has 2 copies of that, that means essentially you can become a 3-4-4 stat line once you have these pistols out, which is just kind of crazy and makes him very versatile. And then Grasping Tendrils is a card that says when the villain initiates an attack against you, cancel that attack. And if you paid using only physical resources, you get to stun the villain as well, which is going to combo well with this protection card that I'm showing, which is Jocasta, which is after Jocasta in your play, choose a defensive event in your discard pile and attach it to her face down, so you can store the Grasping Tendrils under Jocasta and use it when you need it, which I think that's really fun. For aggression, I chose Dropkick, which says deal 4 damage to an enemy, and if you paid with only physicals, you can stun it and draw a card, which is going to be not that difficult to do because he has that wild resource generator. Float Like a Butterfly is really cool because Venom gets a lot of different instances of damage with his multi-gun and his readies that he has in his kit. And then when an enemy is confused, he also has Confuses in his kit. You get to increase the amount of damage that attack deals to that enemy by 1, which is pretty good. And it's a really fun combo for him. And then I added Blaze of Glory because he's a Guardian, and Guardians have a pretty good leadership strategy, especially with Blaze of Glory. It's a very powerful card, and he can play Guardian leadership very well. Now let's talk about number 7, which is Magneto. And Magneto is just a very, very consistent and reliable character. So he has a 2/2/2 stat line, which is really good, 10 health, which is pretty good, and he has an action to discard cards from the top of your deck until you get a magnetic card, and then you add that card to your hand. So that means you're going to be seeing his cards more frequently, and it'll create a really consistent experience. So since you know what you're getting from Magneto, and he has basically an answer to almost everything in his kit, he is kind of freed up on what else he adds to his deck. He's a little more complicated to deck build around because you have to think about how you're discarding things. But anyways, he's very reliable and versatile. His cape says after you use your magnetic pull ability, you can exhaust Magneto's cape and ready Magneto. Just kind of a thing going on where Caleb designed Magneto, and you can tell because there's a cape. And then Magneto's armor. It says after you resolve magnetic pull, if you discard at least one of the following icons, you get those stats. So each different icon gives you a increase to your stats. So you can do that. You can ready, and then that's just very powerful, very consistent. He's survivable and has damage, thwart, and defense all into his kit. And you can build around those in fun ways. So for aggression, I added Looking for Trouble. It says discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play, engage with you, and then remove 3 threat from the main scheme. And he has this combo where he wraps up the minions in metal, meaning they can't activate the whole time. And then when he gets a different card in his kit, you can throw that minion at another enemy, dealing 5 damage and stunning, which is very, very powerful. So getting those minions out isn't actually that bad for him. You can actually turn that into a very big strength. So I like Looking for Trouble for him. Making an entrance, I think, is fun for him because, again, you get those readies. You get a high thwart stat, so you can reliably finish all the threat on the scheme and then get the 2 healing, which is fun. Ever Vigilant is pretty good because the cape gives you aerial, and then when that once you have aerial, Ever Vigilant will let you ready and remove 2 threat from the scheme. It's a fun protection build. And then I added Make the Call for Magneto because, again, you're going to have so many allies in your discard pile that you'll be able to just choose which ally you want with Make the Call, which I think that's a really, really fun build for him as well. So there's 4 different ideas for Magneto if you want to try that out. Now on to number 6, which is Psylocke. And Psylocke, she comes with these upgrades in play, and they're pretty versatile. They're double-sided, and they're resource generators. So she has a very high economy because of that. You start with 6 hand size and alter ego. When you go up into hero form, you only have 4 hand size, but you still have the 2 resource generators. So you have still 1 more resource available to you than a normal hero would. You just have 1 less option available to you as well. But she also has so many confuses in her kit that she goes to alter ego and then gets a 6 hand size with 2 resource generators, which is crazy. She has 8 resources available to her on turn 1, and then basically every other turn after that because she can confuse so often. And then they also increase her stats. So one side gives +1 thwart, and the other side gives +1 attack and piercing, which is just so powerful. So you can have 3 thwart if you want, or you can have 3 attack with piercing, or you can have 2 thwart, 2 attack with piercing. It's just kind of crazy just how innately powerful she is. And then her events are really good too. And on top of all that power, she also has the psionic trait. And just by getting the Psylocke pack and the Phoenix pack, you can basically have all the psionic cards. Not all of them because Cable came with a few, but you can have most of them. So I'm going to recommend just trying out psionic in each aspect because it's such a powerful and fun build. So in aggression, You can get Cybo attack, which deals 4 damage to an enemy, and it gains range. So again, you can just do like really high tempo strategies with that. Again, she has 3 thwart, so threat isn't really a problem. Then you can just start throwing those events out and then dealing damage whenever you need to, which I think that's really fun. Psychic Manipulation is a really fun event. It's an interrupt. When the villain schemes, this activation removes threat instead of placing it. And notice it's not a hero interrupt, so you can use this in Alter Ego as well. If you get a surprise scheme or if you didn't have the confused status. And that can be very powerful, especially when you're against villains that scheme for a lot. You can imagine a villain schemes for 4 against you. So instead of adding 4, you're subtracting 4. So it's essentially like thwarting 8 for 3 costs, which is kind of crazy. Then Cyflail Strike is a protection event. It says after you defend against an enemy attack, deal 3 damage to that enemy and stun it, which I think that's just pretty fun. There's also some other psionic events that defend for you that you can look into. Psychic Kicker is a very powerful leadership event. It readies an ally for 0 cost, which is already a good card. It's already comparable to Get Ready from the core box. But then that ally also gets +2 thwart and +2 attack for the next basic thwart or attack action that phase. It's a ready plus a stat boost, which is just crazy powerful in leadership. Okay, now let's move on to number 5, which is going to be good old Captain America. And Captain America, he's just really solid. He has a 2-2-3 stat line when you consider that you're going to have the shield on the first turn with Retaliate. So amazing stats, 11 health. And then he also has this action, I can do this all day, that says discard a card from your hand to ready. So you just always have available to you 2 thwart and 2 attack by discarding a card on turn 1. For the rest of the game, you have that available to you. And then it gets you more reliable heals when you want to go to Alter Ego, because you can like thwart, ready up, go to Alter Ego, and then recover as well, which is just really, really powerful and makes him better than a lot of other heroes. And because he has these readies built in, it's really easy to build around it because you can just increase his stats with the upgrades from the core box, and then ready with as a kit, and that's just a really fun and solid way to play Captain America that really leans into the identity of each aspect. And for leadership, Avengers Assemble came with him, so you'll have that. And then it says ready each Avenger character you control until the end of the phase. Each Avenger character gets +1 thwart and +1 attack. So if you can get like 3 or 4 allies out and then attack with them all or thwart with them all, whatever you need, play Avengers Assemble, ready up Captain America because he's an Avenger in addition to all your allies and boost the stats. Just a crazy amount of output. So highly recommend all of these builds for Captain America. And then on to Angel. Angel, I was actually surprised to see him make it up that high, but I think he actually does fit the bill here. So he has 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 defense on this side of his hero kit. And then after you play an aerial event, you get to draw a card. And notably, basically every card in his kit is aerial. He has a great stat line with 12 health, and then all of his different forms that he has have responses. So when you go to Alter Ego, you heal. In Angel of Life, after you play the aerial event, you get to draw cards, which helps your economy. And then Archangel form, you had an acceleration icon, which is a little rough, but you have a powerful response where after you play an aerial event, you get to deal damage to an enemy equal to that event's printed cost. So when you need the damage, you can flip up into Archangel and get that damage. And when you need the thwarting, you're in Angel form. And he can change between the forms really easily with some of his event cards. So he'll be seeing all these different forms and then getting these bonuses. And he has just great threat removal, he has great damage, and he's survivable. And he has pretty cool builds in all the aspects. So this is one, if I hadn't used my tier list that I made to make this video, I might have forgot about Angel. So let's talk about it. I just threw some aerial cards. He can do a lot of different things in the aspects. It's not limited to aerial, but I just thought that he's so cool with aerial that I wanted to recommend these. Dive Bomb, the home technique dive bomb thing. He's great at that, but he also can just play dive bomb without it, and then you get like sort of a double hone technique. So it's not the same as hone technique where it's increasing, where hone technique increases both instances of damage, but it's still just after you play the event, deal damage. It's a separate damage from dive bomb, but it's still, you're playing a 4-cost event, wiping out the board, getting 11 damage off for that event, which is really cool. And then Yawn Roll, I really love this. I played this with Angel, and it was so fun. I played it through an entire campaign with him. And it says, after your hero thwarts, remove 3 threat from a scheme, which is just very good. So let's imagine you're in your Angel side, you thwart for 2, and then you play this as a response after your hero thwarts, remove 3 threat from a scheme, which lets you draw a card. But then also he has a different resource card in his kit that will let you recycle aerial cards, and then you can play yawn roll again. And it's just so high tempo on the thwarting to where you can be like the only thwarter in a 3 or 4 player game. Maybe not 4, but for sure 3. You can be the only person thwarting if you lean into this, and I think that's really cool. Now for protection, Perseverance is a really cool card. It says after you change form, give your hero a tough status card. And again, he's going to be changing forms all the time. It's a fun thing you can do a protection with him. And Flying Formation is an alliance card where you get to ready up to 3 aerial characters. So if you're playing with a bunch of other aerial heroes, you can do that. Or if you're playing in solo, you can play the aerial allies and then ready all those characters up. And readying 3 characters is very powerful. So I don't think it's quite as strong as Avengers Assemble, but it's very, very powerful. Now, moving on to number 3. We have Wolverine, and his whole thing is he has claws and he heals. It's great. It's really fun to play. So he has a 2/2/2 stat line, which is great because then he has a little bit of an answer to everything that's going to come up. And then after the player phase begins, you heal 2 damage. And you're going to be using this a lot because you're not going to be full health most of the time because Wolverine's claws have a really powerful ability that let you exhaust them and play an attack event from your hand, taking damage equal to its printed cost. So you can kind of bypass the need to play these attack events, play an extra card a turn by doing this, but his healing makes up for that. So he can have some very, very powerful builds where he is playing a bunch of attack events over and over, and he's healing, and it's really fun. So here's some cards to help you take advantage of that. Clobber. It says deal 3 damage to an enemy. If it's the first card you've played, return it to your hand. So if you see this in your hand, you just play it with the claws, deal 3 damage, take 2 damage, but then you can play it again if you want. I think that's pretty cool. And he can rush really, really well if you just throw in a bunch of attack events, use your healing and your claw economy and your high basic attack once you get your upgrade out to just take out the villain. Justice works quite well for him as well because, again, he has all these attack events in his kit that he can pay for with his claws without hurting the rest of his economy. And then Justice can just thwart on top of that. So it's very good to do him in Justice. And I personally really, really enjoy him in Justice. And I had to add Stealth Strike because, it's him crawling around on through the air duct or whatever it is. And it's an attack event, so you can use your claws to it to deal 4 damage to an enemy. And if the enemy is defeated, you can remove 2 threat from a scheme, which is pretty cool that you can get some thwarting and some damage by just taking some damage that you're going to heal back later. And then for protection, what doesn't kill me works quite well for him. It has a physical resource requirement, and it says heal 2 damage for your hero, ready your hero. And again, he has a great stat line, and then once you get his adamantium upgrade out, you can have 3 attack with piercing, so it's a very powerful basic attack. And when you heal 2 damage, that's essentially like a resource generator if you think about it, because you're healing 2 that you can then spend on playing on playing attack events, which is very powerful. And also sometimes if you overuse his claws, you might be taking a little more damage than you want. So having that extra healing can be very useful both for your economy and staying alive. Then I have Command Team up here because his signature ally is pretty cool. Jubilee comes in, and then she gives both her and Wolverine +2 attack against the target for the rest of the phase. And then when you play Jubilee, you can ready her with the Command Team. And then if she gets taken out, she goes into the discard pile. You can bring her back with Make the Call or Rapid Response, something like that. And then have Command Team still ready for her to ready her up. There's just a lot of damage you can get out of that. Now on to number 2. We have Spider-Man Miles Morales. And specials are one of my favorite mechanics in the entire game. I love specials. So he has that 2/2/2 stat line, which is just very good. It helps him just have an answer to everything like those other heroes we were talking about. And his specials say Venom Blast, deal 2 damage to an enemy, stun that enemy. Very good. And Spider Camouflage says give Spider-Man a tough status card, confuse an enemy. Also very good. That one's crazy that you get a confuse and a tough status card out of that. And then his hero attack event that comes with him is very good. It triggers the Venom Blast ability, and his Swing In is very good. So for 2 cost, you're playing Swing In, removing 4 threat from the scheme, and if you paid with a mental, which pretty easy to do because he has the web shooters in his kit as well, you resolve Spider Camouflage, giving yourself a tough status card and confusing enemy. So again, 2 cost thwart event, removes 4 threat from a scheme, confuses an enemy, and gives you a tough status card. It's just crazy that exists, but it feels so good when it happens. And then Web Shot, 2 cost event, 4 damage, plus 2 to an enemy, which you could split up if you wanted to. And then you get to stun that enemy as well. So both of these are just crazy value. They give him survivability, they give him damage, they give him threat removal, they give him control, all with just this baked into his hero kit. Meaning that you can kind of emphasize whatever you want when you build him. So here's some cards I thought were really fun for him. Press the advantage in aggression. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is stunned or confused, draw a card. They're going to be stunned and confused a lot when you're playing Miles, so it's just an extra source of damage that gives you card draw, helps you find more of Miles' cards. It's great. And then the Justice ally, Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, gets her cost reduced for each confused enemy in play. And again, it's going to be a lot of confused enemies. I was tempted to use Float Like a Butterfly here for Miles, but I'd already used that for Venom, and I made a rule that I wasn't allowed to repeat. But combine these for some great effects. And then Flip is just a cool card for Web Warriors. You deal damage to Web Warrior control, place 2 stun status cards on up to 2 enemies. Very cool for multiplayer when there's like these tough minions out that, especially nowadays with these Thunderbolts, you probably want to stun them. And then there's also a lot of protection Web Warriors that you can build around that Miles can take advantage of, and I think that's really cool. And then Clue for leadership, great ally. He tutors events in your hand, so after Clue enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an event, and add that to your hand, and then shuffle your deck. And then if you're finding these very powerful identity-specific events, that can be very good. Notably, Brother Voodoo in protection can do the same thing, so that's another thing you can think about for protection. And now on to the number 1 character. I'd love to hear your guesses in the comments. If you want to pause the video, tell me what character you think is the most versatile, and then look at the video and then realize that it wasn't the same character, and then tell me I'm wrong. That would be a great time. I'd enjoy that. Let's go on to the number 1 character. Is X23, and I was kind of surprised to see this when the tier list said that. After I input the weights that I felt represented this well, but it makes a lot of sense as well. So the way X23 works is she has this response of after she takes any amount of damage, you get to ready her once per phase. And she has a signature ally that after Honey Badger takes any amount of damage, you get to ready X23. And then she has her upgrade that comes out, her claws that say exhaust her claws, take 2 damage, get +2 attack, which notably, since you're taking the damage, also readies you. So she has a great stat line, a bunch of readies, and she works really, really well. So let's go over some of the builds here. For aggression, I thought Fluid Motion was cool because when you play an attack event, you can get +1 attack, buff up that attack, ready multiple times for a bunch of damage like that. Very fun build. And then let's go over Sidekick first. So this is the strongest way to play her, in my opinion, is you Sidekick Honey Badger, increase her health, and then just keep her around. It can be a little rough because your obligation steals Honey Badger, but if that wasn't there, then there'd be like nothing stopping X23 from just using Sidekick on Honey Badger and dominating like every game. So basically, Honey Badger is not limited on readying X23. So X23's ability of after she takes damage is limited to once per phase. But for Honey Badger, it's not. So every time Honey Badger takes damage, you can ready X23. And that gets really crazy, especially with like things like side by side, which is great. You can store readies like Command Team and get ready for Honey Badger. And when Honey Badger takes consequential damage from just using an activation, that readies X23. And it just kind of goes crazy. It's not balanced at all. It's so ridiculously powerful. And then for protection, I think she works really interestingly in protection. So instead of trying to do like a perfect defense build with her, you actually kind of want to take damage. So it's once per phase, meaning that you can do it on the player phase and the villain phase where you get the ready. So when you defend for 2, you're blocking like 2 damage from the villain's activation, but then if you take 1, so let's say you get attacked for 3, you block 2, you take 1 damage, you get to ready up. But then you get to counterpunch as well, which I think that's great because X23's damage or attack bonus lasts until the end of the round, so you'll still have 3 attack. So you're counterpunching for 3 on that. I think that's just really fun, and there's a lot of cool things you can do with her in protection. And then for Justice, I think mission training makes a lot of sense. Again, buffing up Honey Badger, giving her that extra hit points so that you get more activations out of Honey Badger. And you can also increase X23's thwarting stat, use all these readies, and she can just become like an absolute powerhouse in every single aspect. So here they are, the top 10 aspect versatile heroes in Marvel Champions. And I'm not going to try to claim that this is the only possible list that could be made, but I do think that all of these are fantastic options if you're looking for heroes that can have really cool and fun and powerful builds in all the different aspects and give you a really fun and reliable experience that you can play in many different games, many different scenarios. And then because you're playing them with all these different builds, hopefully you can enjoy these heroes for longer. And again, there was 40 different cards that we went over in here that you can try to build around and build fun decks for. So a lot of stuff to try in this video. I hope you try it. And if you do, let me know in the comments how that went. And for those of you who want to stick around and see how I made this using the living tier list that I created, I'll go to that now. So here we are at the living tier list website that I created for you all. This is going to be a great tutorial as well for showing how you can upload the weighting settings. So what I did was I went through and I messed with these sliders until I created what I valued for the aspect versatile heroes. And then that updated and put out with the list. And then I was able to save that list by pressing this button down here. And then when I'm returning to the site, I can just upload that. So you just click browse files. You can't see my file browser because I'm just capturing the internet screen. Then you choose your file that it saved, upload it. I named it top 10 aspect versatile heroes. Collapse that, and then you can see that this output the list. So notably here, I included Shadowcat, not Cable. But that's just because Cable's really weird. He doesn't really fit into this tier list system very well. And he just really, really wants to play Justice to finish all those side schemes. He has other builds available to him, but he was a little more complicated than I was wanting to cover and doesn't fit into the system as well. So I did from X23 to Shadowcat for my top 10. And here's how I did that. So I started by just setting everything to 0 on here. So you can just like click on the middle to make it 0. So if you want that 0, like that. But then here's what I valued, the actual stats. Tempo, I put at 4. Or economy, I didn't value because having high economy doesn't really make you better or versatile through the aspects. You can play a lot of cards, but it doesn't really help you have like special things that are going to give you bonuses in the different aspects. So I didn't include any economy. Tempo I did include because if you're needing time to build out to get to your final strength, you're going to naturally be going towards things that are stalling. And if you have good tempo to where you're strong at the beginning, think of like Captain America, you can do different builds in the aspects. So you have more available to you. You can still build with those characters. Like Captain America has a very powerful late game, but you're not locked in. So that's why I valued tempo a lot. Card value, I put it 0. I originally put this up, but then I found that that actually wasn't correct for me because what ended up happening was just characters that had really good card value were at the top, which wasn't actually representing it again. So like Doctor Strange ended up in the top of this list when I had the card value stat up. But I don't think that's representative because just because you have really powerful cards doesn't mean that you're going to play differently. We might even be oppositely incentivized to where you're wanting to only play your cards, which isn't what I was looking for. Survivability, I gave a little bit of points because it helps in protection if you're taking damage. But also for the other builds, if you are constantly having to fix your hero from getting defeated by just a couple attacks, or you're always having to block with an ally or something like that because your hero can't survive, it's going to force you into those more like ally heavy and or defense event heavy builds and then away from the rest of the builds. So I have that up. And then villain damage I have up because if you don't have any villain damage in your kit, you're going to have to include that at the cost of other things. Threat removal, I put high up because this is a big thing that heroes have to fix. If they have low threat removal, they're kind of locked into justice or leadership in solo, which isn't what I wanted. Reliability, I put up at 3 because I just think that having a reliable experience with the hero is going to be very important when you're thinking about having versatile builds, because then you aren't afraid to try things and you can depend on your hero to do certain things so that you can build around that easier because it'll be more predictable. And minion control I have up because, again, if you don't have any minion control, you're going to have to build that into your deck some way of dealing with that. And if you have a little bit, you can still make it a strength by adding more, but you're not forced to. And for control, again, just giving your hero a little bit of breathing room and safety from all the villain's treacherous deeds. And then support, I just put it -1 because I didn't really want, since this is a solo focused list, I didn't want characters that are just really good at supporting other heroes to be beating characters that are self-sufficient, because that's not what I was going for. And then everything else, I just left at 0 because, again, I'm not looking for like specific builds. I'm looking for the ability to do a variety of things, not that you have access to like web wares or repurpose or mystic or whatever. Late game, not a factor. It just doesn't really relate to this. Simplicity, not a factor because I'm not trying to get it to be more simple heroes. I'm just wanting to output the heroes. And then stun and confuse, I didn't add bonuses to characters that have stuns or confuses because I feel like the control and minion control is enough. You don't have to also status lock to be up here. And then multiplayer consistency, I left at 0. And then with those settings, that is what created this list. So I put in what I valued in this, and then it output the list that matched that, which I thought was really cool. And again, had I not done it this way, I think Angel might have slipped through the cracks, or I might not have had X23 up there, but it made a lot of sense to me after seeing this why X23 was up there. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. Helps the channel a lot, and I hope that you try out these different builds, try out these heroes, try out the tier list website, which will be linked in the description. Stay zesty. I'll see you next time.